Major political parties are often known as focus groups, paying research companies to find out what voters are thinking and feeling, and they use that to shape policies, messages and win elections. So we thought, if the Prime Minister and government are listening to these focus groups, why don't we cut out the middleman and find out what these groups are saying? Joining me now live is Director of Redbridge Group, Simon Welsh. Simon, thanks for joining us. I want to talk today about the cost of living crisis. It's been ongoing, as we know, the last few months. Last week alone, we found out that inflation is expected to peak at 8% by the end of the year. We're nearing the end of 2020. How much are people thinking about money and finances as we head into the new year?
Yeah, it's absolutely top of mind at the moment. It dominates all the discussions that we have in focus groups. Sure, there's other concerns around health systems and climate, and these sorts of things are sort of still there, but this cost of living is really biting, and it's biting into relatively wealthier areas, people that are on good jobs, dual incomes kind of things that's talking about now having to make sacrifices. It's an expectation that the next sort of not even 6 months, but the next 2 or 3 years are going to be pretty tough. And people are starting to think now about how their lifestyle is going to be very different for these next 2 or 3 years, that we may not get back to sort of where we were before COVID for 5 years. There's a palpable sense of loss in the focus groups that we're talking to, that people feel like, this lifestyle that I once loved and enjoyed is gone, and is gone for quite some time.
I guess people are trying to make savings as best as they possibly can. How are people responding to the government's response to this crisis?
Well, the budget from last week, we sort of touched on last week, was really all it did was sort of gin up concerns. So that the one thing that's really stuck out of the budget announcement from last week was that the energy prices are going to go up 30 to 50%. These are the numbers being quoted back to us in focus groups. That's quite unusual for focus groups to be able to quote specific numbers back out of announcements like that. And so they're still looking. There's an expectation now for federal and state governments to step in this space and really do some big and meaningful things, not little things here and there, little $100 rebates. They're looking for big responses to this. And in the energy space, one of the things that we keep consistently coming across is the idea that the whole energy system, being a major cause of the cost of living crisis, needs reform. And sort of talking about sort of renationalising parts of the industry is very much on people's minds, unprompted, coming up in focus groups. It's a remarkable time.
Simon, we know that the Victorian election is just around the corner. What are focus groups telling you about cost of living over there, and is that likely to sway votes?
Absolutely, but in an interesting way. And what I mean by that is, people really look at, say, bold action, bold plan. How are we going to address this? How are we going to get through this? That's what they're looking for right now. And what's interesting in relation to our focus groups in Victoria is what we're not getting. And what we're not getting in those focus groups is a clear sense of a kind of a core narrative from either side of politics, Labor or Liberal. So that idea of, well, what is it fundamentally that Labor's promising? What is it fundamentally that Liberals are promising to get us through this? We're not getting that idea of a core plan. What we're getting is this sense of a series of, sort of sporadic awareness of a series of announcements. So you do a focus group here and, 3 or 4 people might be aware of announcement X, 2 or 3 might be aware of announcement Y, but there's no sense of a kind of a plan or a vision or a narrative that ties these things together. And that should be a worry for the major parties. And I think that's part of a lot of what we're seeing in the polling that's coming out of Victoria, where we're seeing this growing other party, the third way kind of party vote, whether it's Greens, whether it's Independents, or whether it's some of the other minors, is because they're not getting from the majors this sense of a plan, a coherent vision to get us through this crisis that everyone is worried about.
Yeah, people want help and they want it now. Simon Welsh, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us.
No worries. Thanks for your time.